Hi, this is Krista Walsh.
Hey, this is Daniel Arthur Smith.
Hey, this is Terry R. Hill.
Hey, it's Josh Hayes, and you're listening to
30-minute author interviews
with my friend Preston Lay.
Woohoo! Welcome, everybody, to this episode of 30-Minute Author Interviews. Today we have two guests with us. We have Nick Cole and Jason Anspach. Thank you for coming on and doing 30-Minute Author Interviews. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Preston, for having us on. We were talking before the show, and I thought we'd been on the show, or at least I'd been on it, and I know Jason's been on it. But if I guess listening to it so much and being a fan of it, I feel like I've been on it. But this is my first time, and it's just actually quite an honor. Thank you.
It is. Thank you. I'm excited to be talking to you finally.
Very
yeah,
cool.
I mean, it's cool to be on. I just
Jason,
don't know why. Are
you here?
Well, I'm here, but I noticed that Nick's name got billed first, and alphabetically A comes before C and J comes before N. And I'm just kind of wondering what's up with that. Is it just because he sells more books, or because he's Dragon Award winner, or I don't get it. What's up?
It's because he's Mr. Hollywood. We don't want to hurt his feelings.
Mr. Hollywood.
But I'm known by some as Mr. Bollywood, and and that also B is before H.
And you did name one of the characters in our Galactic Outlaws an Indian name.
Yeah, I did. That's right.
Yeah, that was your nod to Bollywood.
Just I'm trying to pay him back.
Have you ever actually watched a Bollywood film?
I haven't.
No, I haven't.
Have I seen one?
They're actually more wholesome in certain ways than Western films, and so there's usually nothing offensive in them. And they're kind of wacky and cool. And there's actually some that have really high production values, but they have over the top fight scenes. Over the top. Like think karate meets pro wrestling.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah, it's and then always there's like two things. Then there will be a dance. There has to be a dance where the man dances around the woman, and then there's trees. There's always got to be this big scene where the guy chases the girl around trees, and that's pretty much every Bollywood film. But I actually quite enjoy them.
I like the dancing. I love it when people put that type of dancing online because the music's fun and the dancing's fun.
The music is fun. I like the music.
Yeah. So, we have started out these podcasts with an episode called Two Truths and a Lie. And I think right now I'm actually one above being 500. So if I get both of y'all's wrong, I'm going to be below 500. So,
That's a shame.
Jason, since I introduced Nick first, I'll let you go first with Two Truths and a Lie.
All right. I was born in Fort Hood, Texas.
Okay.
I attended the final Mariners game in the Kingdome, and in my office, I have Ken Griffey Jr.'s autograph hanging on my wall.
Now, all of those actually sound pretty plausible.
I really want you to go below 500.
I think I'm probably going to. I have a feeling I'm going to get yours wrong, and it's going to put me at 500. So, man, I don't know what baseball team you like, but I think it'd be cool to have a Ken Griffey autograph. So I'm going to say that one's true. And for some reason, I'm going to say being born in Fort Hood. Hang on. I want to say that's true, but maybe one of your Mariners stories a lie. I always overthink these, and this is why I really suck at this game. I'm going to go with going to the last Mariners game in that stadium is the lie.
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true, actually. It was I don't have an autograph of Ken Griffey Jr. on my wall. I used to. And we had our house renovated a while back, and someone actually stole the autographed card.
No.
During renovations.
Yeah.
My dad has an awful baseball card story. When he was little, they went to some store, and he bought a pack of cards. And in the pack of cards was a Babe Ruth rookie card. Oh, wow. And he went running out of the store and ran home. And between the store and the house, he lost the card.
Oh, man. And he still hasn't gotten over it, has he?
Probably not. So yeah. Well, dang. Now
Right, well, I did my part, Nick. He's at 500.
Yep.
Finish him off.
Finish me off.
Okay.
Kill him.
Sweep the leg.
I have to sweep the leg. Okay. Let me think of what my lie is going to be. I would say, okay. All right. I've got it. Okay. Here we go. In 1991, I held the record for longest caught thrown bat. And that was actually at the Seattle Kingdom when one of the Yankees threw a bat into the crowd, and I caught it. I was catching it to protect a young girl from getting hit. I was once wanted for murder. And number 3 would be I know Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, I'm going below 500. Definitely going below 500 on this. Man. The first one was pretty detailed, so that might be the lie. But then again, being wanted for murder was pretty short, but it could be an incredible story.
Right.
Dang it. I'm going to go with, since number 1 was a really long story, I'm going to say number 1's the lie about catching, that you had the record for longest catchback.
Okay. Because I'm a solid Christian, I can't lie, so all 3 are true.
Are they really?
Yes, all 3 are true.
Wow. So what's the story behind you being wanted for murder? Can you tell us on the air?
Sure. I sure can. I'll tell it as quick as I can. It's usually a long cocktail story, but
It's a fun story.
My wife and I were living in New York City, and we were sharing a very small apartment. We went to an event. We lost our keys. I had to kick in the door to the house, to the apartment that we were in. And so then we went in, and then later that, week we separated because we weren't doing too hot, and I drove back to California, and I just left her there. And then about a week after that, she said, let's work this out. Let's stay together, all that kind of stuff. And so I said, well, just pick up everything that you have and throw it on the bed, and I'll just have it shipped and come back to California. And so that's what we did. And she worked at a stock brokerage on Wall Street. And they'd had a murder at another office. So the murder was kind of running through their hearts. My wife does not like confrontations. So she told me to call in and tell them that she wouldn't be in for work that Monday after she'd just flown out to California. And so I called in, and she'd told them on Friday, I broke up with Nick, everything like that. So they thought we were broken up. And here I am calling in Monday morning saying, Nicole won't be in. Heh, heh, heh. And then I called in Tuesday, and then they sent the cops by the apartment in Brooklyn and found the door busted in and what looked like the house ransacked because we'd piled everything on the bed. And so then they called me, and they had her mom call me, and they were side coaching her mother saying, get him to tell you where the body is. And they were actually sending squad cars to my location to pick me up. So for a brief amount of time, I was wanted for murder. And part of my acting resume that I always took away from that experience is that the Brooklyn PD told my mother-in-law that I was a real smooth talker.
Wow, what a story. Man. I don't think I've ever heard you tell that on any other podcast I've heard you on. So
it's a first.
That's a first for me.
I might have said it on Forbes one time, but no one listens to Forbes, and everybody thinks everybody is lying on there anyways.
Yeah, that's funny. I actually got questioned for a murder that happened below us when we lived in an apartment. We actually, I don't even think the guy's gone to trial yet because my wife got a summons.
Wow.
We were coming home. I don't know if we went to the movies or we were out shopping, but we lived in an apartment complex, and we lived on the second floor, and by each front door, there was a sliding glass door and blinds. And this guy on the apartment below us was kind of standing in the blinds, and he made a noise at us when we were going up, almost like a yelp sound or whatever. So we just kind of waved to him, and we went upstairs. Well, apparently within the next, 30 minutes, his, I think it was his cousin, with some friends came in, broke into the apartment, drug him out of the apartment, threw him in the trunk of the car, and then drove off and killed him. And so
Yikes.
we had the police my wife called me the next day and she's like, hey, just a little FYI. Apparently our neighbor below us got murdered and the police are probably going to come question you about it when you get home. So I got home and sure enough, there were some detectives downstairs and everything. I come upstairs. I'm not even inside for a minute when they knock on the door and I open it up and they're like, can we come in? I was like, sure. And they come in, they go, so what do you want to tell us? I was like, I don't know. What do you want to know? And they're like, you know why we're here. I'm like, actually, no, I don't. So why don't you tell me why you're here? And then I'll let you know if I know anything. So, that's probably why I didn't get the summons, because I wasn't very nice to them. So.
You're a smooth talker.
That's right. So, that's funny. So, for those that might not know who y'all are, we'll start with Nick this time. Why don't you kind of give people a brief bio on who you are and what you do?
My name is Nick Cole. I am a writer. I'm an indie writer. A lot of people discovered me back in 2011 when sort of indie books were blowing up with a book called The Old Man in the Wasteland, which was a post-apocalyptic version of Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. And I got a lot of sales out of that, about 80,000. And then I got picked up by HarperCollins and got a book contract. And then I wrote for them for a few years. And then we parted ways. And then I wrote a book this year called Control Alt Revolt. Actually, it was a year ago next month that it came out. And that was called Control Alt Revolt. And that ended up winning the most prestigious award in science fiction, which is the Dragon Award, now that the Hugo has sullied itself. And I won that for Best Post-Apocalyptic Novel. And people just kind of know me for post-apocalyptic fiction. I write a little zombie fiction occasionally, and I write some end of the world stuff, which is post-apocalyptic. And then lately I've kind of been, pioneering or at the forefront, I'm trying to, of a new genre that's actually being birthed as we speak, and that's called lit RPG. And a lot of people don't know what that is, but I think people are going to begin to find out what it is. Probably the most famous lit RPG novel is Ready Player One, but it's starting to go through a real explosion, and it's even taking over the cyberpunk list on Amazon. And so my novel Control Alt Revolt and Soda Pop Soldier both fall into that, and they're doing really well with the kids and people and readers who are really digging lit RPG.
I've actually seen that a lot on Amazon lately. When I'm just scrolling through, you'll see the book title and then next to it, lit RPG. I had no idea that you were involved in that.
Yeah. Someone had to really point it out to me. And then I looked at it, I'm like, and I would say, are my novels classically what lit RPG is becoming? They're on the fringe, but a lot of the solid lit RPG now is like literally people writing stories about being in a game, which is what Soda Pop Soldier is, and then Control Alt Revolt to a lesser extent. But it's really this exploding genre, and it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Well, Jason, your turn. For those that don't know who you are or what you do, why don't you kind of tell them who you are and what you do?
Yeah, well, so I'm Jason Anspach, and I think I've only got one full year under my belt of indie writing, right? I've written 3 novels in a little over a year's time, and all those are in a series called Till Death. What we're working on now is more of a military sci-fi space opera, which is kind of what I envisioned writing when I started. But I thought, if I'm going to write one book and that's it, no one's going to read it, I want to write a book that I have a lot of fun with, so that if my grandkids read it, they can say, this is really fun. This is really funny. We're glad you wrote that, Grandpa. And so I wrote Till Death, which is a 1950s sort of paranormal noir detective novel about ghosts that come back and a private investigator who's making his way in the world and helping him out, set in the Cold War with a little bit of intrigue and a lot of humor. Anyway, it did really well, and people said, write more. So I wrote 2 more and met Nick during that process, and we just hit it off really well. We're D&D buddies. We play Dungeons and Dragons at least once a month, and decided that this project that we're doing, Galactic Outlaws, Galaxy's Edge, was sort of the thing that we could put our heads together on and kind of build together. And so that's how that's going.
Sounds good. Well, we have some fan questions. Some of them are for y'all individually, so I'm going to go ahead and knock those out before we get into your combined work here. So we'll start with you, Jason. These questions come from Chris Freed. He wants to know, where does your fascination come from with the 50s?
Oh, yeah. So when I grew up, this is going to sound kind of strange. My mom was a big fan of the movies, especially from the 1940s and 50s. And so we watched them all the time. And I had an idea just based on the colorization that wasn't the same. But we grew up listening to Elvis, the Big Bopper, and a lot of songs from the 60s. And while I was a kid, I had no idea that wasn't contemporary music. Like, I didn't realize that the Beatles had split up decades prior. I didn't understand that Richie Valens. I thought it was all just the same as Billy Joel or Wham or whatever else, and so we were just indoctrinated with culture from the 1940s, from the 1950s, the music, movies, you name it. So I ended up feeling like that's a part of my childhood, even though I wasn't there. Like, if you can name a movie from that time period, I've seen it, and if it's a comedy from that time period, or a musical like Seven Brides for Seven Brothers or Brigadoon, Singing in the Rain, I've seen it probably 10 or 20 times. So it's really natural for me to write in that time period, just because I had a weird sort of upbringing where that was just there almost more than the 80s. Like, I feel like I remember the 50s more than I remember the 80s, even though I was actually growing up in the 80s.
Okay. And then his last question for you is, he wants to know, are you considering making audiobooks out of your Till Death series? Yeah,
I'd like to. And I always tell myself, well, maybe I should read it, but I haven't. And I haven't found a narrator. I actually put it up on ACX like last year, which is Amazon's little audio thing, and just didn't get a bite for a narrator. And it might be a tough book to narrate because there are a lot of parts, and it reads a bit like an old radio drama. But if someone comes along and says, I want to do this, that's probably the most likely way for it to happen. But unless I just find myself with a ton of time, if I'm ever unemployed, that's when the audiobook version will come out, because I'll have all sorts of time to record.
Okay. And then, Nick, some fan questions for you. The first one's from Chris Freed. He wants to know, will you ever write a nonfiction book about your experience in the military and or your experiences in Hollywood?
Probably not. I would say I would probably never write anything classically nonfiction, but a lot of my stuff is nonfiction, because my wife, and things will happen to me, and my wife will say, that's going into a book, isn't it? Because pretty much I use everything that I encounter or have done or have learned, and everything kind of goes into the book. I would say the book Fight the Rooster, a lot of that in certain ways was my experience in Hollywood. I was in the military, so I think I can write better, military characters and scenes than people who haven't served. And, but having said that, Tom Clancy did a great job with that. So, and he was never in, so you can't really say that. That's not fair. But no, I probably would. The answer would no. I wouldn't write any nonfiction. I don't think, unless it was like Jason and I were just talking about at the break, the Actor's Guide to DMing Dungeons and Dragons. That could be a nonfiction book. Maybe a cookbook. I would do that. Or if I went and lived in Europe for a little while, I might write a travel book. But no, I like fiction. I like the freedom of making stuff up.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's kind of now pull y'all in together and talk about Galaxy's Edge. So I'll let y'all fight who wants to tell the story. But who had the idea for Galaxy's Edge, and who approached who to do this project?
I'll let Jason go with that.
Okay.
Is that because you don't really know the answer? Because I don't know that I know the answer either.
Oh, no, I know the answer. It was all me. It was all my idea. I generally have all the good ideas. And then I tell them to Jason, and then he's like, that's a stupid idea. And I'm like, you're nobody. No, it's not. No, I think that Jason and I had been in the lead up to Star Wars, the Rogue One that was coming out, and even what came out before that, I think that for a lot of us, there's been this apprehension that it's going to suck. And the thing that I like all the movies that Jason was talking about in the 40s and 50s. I'm a big fan of the road pictures with Bing Crosby and Bob Hope and Dorothy Lamour. That's why I really dig what Jason's writing about, because it's so singular and no one's writing about it. And a lot of indie writers, there's this rush to do the trash that everybody else is doing. And I would honestly say to everybody out there, like, you can read Jason's books and have a good time. Then you could turn around and hand it to your kid or your grandmother or even a coworker, and they're not going to look at you like a freak. Like, he writes really well, but it's maybe I'm getting older, but I'm beginning to appreciate things that you can read and not feel shocked or offended by, because there's so much stuff out there. So I say that to come full circle back around to Jason has an acting background. I have a acting background. Star Wars was really big to both of us, and I think, you know, probably you too, Preston. You're about the same age as us. Mm-hmm. So all of us, you know, people who were alive and got, you know, exposure to the first Star Wars at a young age, and then what came after at the end of the 1990s. I think that there was this fear that when we heard Disney bought it, that, you know, it was going to get weird and things are going to go sideways. And that fear is still very real to me. And Star Wars inherently, because of the art, is self-devouring in certain ways, because it's set up a couple of tropes that are sucking more and more energy and mass and life out of the universe, in favor of, we've got to tell why the Skywalkers are the most messed up family in the galaxy. We've got to have Jedis, and we've got to blow up a planet or a really big starship that's becoming redundant. Mm-hmm. And the question is, will they be able to break out of that? Having said that, when we were all kids and we had the little Star Wars action figures, or we saw Star Wars, you know, or we picked up a clod of dirt and pretended it was our ship, we were making up our own stories, and it didn't always involve the Skywalkers, and it didn't always involve blowing up a big Death Star. You know, there's something beautifully mundane in the Star Wars universe, and you want to play with all those toys. And so I think Jason and I began talking about it, and then it was really Jason's idea to say, hey, let's serialize this. That's kind of a new thing to approach the industry, and maybe get some traction and maybe develop a base. And so let's try to do a serial version. Like, there was a very popular serial book that came out in audio format last year. So we're just doing sort of a blog-esque format, and then we'll release some novels as we develop a fan base. So I say all that to say that it was a mutual genesis.
So for those that might not know what Galaxy's Edge is, can y'all give kind of the little book blurb on what it's about?
Yeah, we have a nickname for it. We call it Star Wars, Not Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to take the things that we loved about Star Wars, which is really just part of our culture now. We wanted to take that, but we wanted to have the freedom to tell any kind of story we wanted, and avoid, like, some of the tropes that Nick was talking about. Avoid everybody having the Force powers. Avoid everybody being related. We wanted to kind of be able to catch the excitement that was on the periphery. So if you remember, like with a character like Boba Fett, when he shows up in The Empire Strikes Back, you're kind of like, well, who's this guy? I mean, because his first appearance is on the bridge of the Star Destroyer Executor, or Executor. I guess it depends on how. I always thought Executor was cooler, but whatever. The Super Star Destroyer, and he's standing there with a bunch of other bounty hunters. Bosk gets to growl, and Vader kind of singles out Boba Fett and says, "And no disintegrations." And then he's the guy that captures, that follows Han, and he's the guy that takes him off to Jabba the Hutt. But at the end of the movie, you're like, well, who is that guy? That guy was cool. I mean, and if you think about the number of lines he had, he got this huge following. And so what we wanted to do really was to be able to say, let's explore those fringes. Let's forget about the huge big drama and the chosen one and all that stuff, and let's just look at what life in a Star Wars type universe is like, and kind of see where it goes. And so that's what we've been writing. And I mean, almost, I think, like to a T, the readers have been responding and saying, this is it. This is exactly what I was feeling like. And I'm watching it play out before me.
Yeah. I think the touchstone that we found was we wanted to tell a story set in a universe full of stormtroopers who we call legionnaires, freighter pilots, and bounty hunters. And really do. Yeah, that's a big thing. Get away from who's father. And the Force is wonderful and cool visually in a movie, but it probably doesn't work super hot in a book, because you can't do all that. I mean, you could, and you could describe it and it's great. But again, it's one of those things that just sucks all the attention, and because it's so easy to solve all your problems with the Force. And so what we wanted to do is not really introduce that. We will much later in a very weird way. And that's the way we're attacking this whole Star Wars, not Star Wars thing, is that we're actually taking a lot of the known Star Wars concepts and then kind of riffing on them a bit. So with Jason's character, you think you're getting Han Solo, but maybe you're actually getting who we were really introduced to Han Solo as really actually more of a mercenary person. Instead of this, we're told all through the introduction to Han Solo that he's just out for himself and all this stuff, and then he just goes about for the rest of the movies not living up to his image. So that would be the rough introduction to Jason's story arc. Am I right there? And then yeah. And then I took and said, what if Obi-Wan Kenobi were a bounty hunter with Alzheimer's? And so, yeah. And so we're just kind of riffing on that. We're definitely going for an old Western movie feel. So that's where our movie background is coming in that we're using one particular movie as sort of the arc of the story that we want to tell. And this is just a mean little tale that no one knows about and no one's life changes over, and planets don't blow up, and the fate of the galaxy does not depend on anybody within this tale. And so what that presses us to do as writers is make the stakes incredibly personal and incredibly high.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I think that's where you get some of your really brutal writing. Some of the best movies you go back and watch are just mean little tales that don't really affect anybody but the people involved. And the problem sometimes with space opera, you notice like with a lot of the Avengers movies and Guardians of the Galaxy and Star Wars, every week you've got to save the entire planet while in the process blowing up a city. Everything becomes so important and so larger than life. And I think even the movies are starting to fatigue from it. So we just wanted to tell something maybe along the lines more of like Fargo set in space.
It's kind of funny you mentioned the destroying the cities, because someone put up I forget who it was, but someone put up a photo online over the past couple of weeks that I totally agree with, and it hit me again this week. Is they said something like, when Superman first landed on the Earth, a little bit of rock came up when he hit the ground, but now whenever he hits the ground, a whole street gets destroyed, and it seems like everything now is destroying an entire city.
I read that too. Said. When he first land, and then it's got to be an entire block peels up. I remember. So we were reading the same thing. Yeah. And then someone in that last Superman versus Batman movie or whatever, they added up the damage. And they said, this cat did $220 trillion worth of damage,
Wow.
To take out 3 people.
and it kind of hit me this week, too, because they released a new trailer for the Power Rangers movie. And it was like same thing. There's just like massive destruction in the movie. But when I was a kid, when that first came out, it was like cheesy kung fu, and they almost always fought in like a desert. I mean, there was like nothing getting destroyed. So
and it's the problem with the Star Wars movie now. And like, I even made fun of it in Control Alt Revolt, and I wrote Control Alt Revolt before The Force Awakens came out, and I just talked about I that's a future novel, and so I was having the character make fun of what had become of the Star Wars franchise. And the character says, every movie has to reveal someone's relative, like Jason said, and something big has to be blown up. And then lo and behold, they did it in The Force Awakens. And I'm like, well, they're not going to do it. Oh, yes, they are. They're going to do it in Rogue One too. It's like every story has to have this really sort of base firework display to round it out. But sometimes, you can go back and watch really great movies that end very subtly and very easy, and they don't need that. And I think a lot of filmmakers have gotten weak because they can do so much, and they're not challenging themselves with great story.
Yeah.
Right.
Since y'all call this Star Wars, not Star Wars, is there something that each of y'all brought from Star Wars that you loved, so you've kind of brought it over into this story y'all have created?
I think the main thing that we both brought was a sense of science fiction adventure. We made a point. We said, we're going to have faster than light. We're going to have hyperspace. We're going to have blasters, but we're not going to worry about scientifically if it's possible. We don't care. We don't care if the jetpacks can work or not. We don't care about any of that. Is it fun and is it exciting? That's what we want. So can a ship blow up into a fireball in space? Sure, because it's cool. We wanted to carry that in there. We like the idea of a militaristic Wild West world like Star Wars is, but at the same time, in Galaxy's Edge, we're not at the point where there's this evil empire. It's still a republic, but it's a republic in decline. It's a bloated, self-serving republic that is no longer representing the galaxy. It's representing the people in control. And the galaxy starting to suffer, and that's how rebellion starts in Galaxy's Edge. It's not because we've got this evil dictator; it's because we're not represented. And really, you look at our revolution, and that was it, right?
Yeah, or you look at, we won't get all political because it's this weekend, but in a certain way, there was this massive reaction to a bloated government that was really just creating this series of elites and blah, blah, blah. And whether it was true or not, the people began to perceive that the government was serving itself for the sake of serving itself at the expense of the people. And so whether you like Donald Trump or not, if you actually look at his voters, they're across all political platforms. And were they voting for what one side would have you to believe, racism and all this? No, they were voting against what they perceived to be a government that was feeding on them. And so the cool thing about that you can extrapolate from that and add to the Star Wars universe kind of thing is you really want to say, and Lucas did a really bad job of this. If you go back to episode 1, there you are, you've waited 20 years to find out, the beginning of Star Wars. And the first crawl coming up in the movie is this document about trade taxation and wars and blah, blah, blah. And you're like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. And, Lucas was trying to explain how an emperor would take over everything. And I think, in my opinion, he did ultimately a really bad job of it. What both sides would tell you right now about Donald Trump is that he is emperor-esque, and that one side emphatically voted for him because they saw him as an outsider who was willing to fix all their problems of this bloated republic. And then the other side would say, oh, he's the emperor and he's evil and all this kind of stuff. So there is a little bit of world building going on in our series. And if we did want to take this where I think we're going to take it, we would effectively be explaining how an emperor would take over the galaxy and be perceived as a savior legitimately, not just smoke and mirrors, but he would, people would say, hey, we're tired of all these fat cats. Let's elect a dynamic leader. And that was always a big theory in with a lot of science fiction writers from the 70s and 80s. And it was the concept of a benevolent dictator, that was actually your best form of government. But the problem is there's no dynastic succession. So you'd have to have, somebody who was Nietzschean and was sort of above it all. But a lot of people like Asimov and Heinlein and stuff like that, they actually would postulate that and I might be wrong on who exactly, but that generation postulated that the best sort of government that you could ever have would be a benevolent dictator.
So what is the writing process like, since both of y'all are kind of writing?
It's 100 monkeys typing.
So it sounds like each of y'all kind of have like a story arc y'all are working on. Is that right?
Right. We both go ahead, Jason.
Yeah. No, we both do. So we both have a story arc, and ultimately we know where we're going. But we give each other, I think, full range. So Nick will write chapters in his arc, and I'll write chapters in my arc, and then we send them back and forth and kind of give comments, and then just kind of put it together from there. So there will be a point where we're both writing a chapter at the same time, probably on a shared document. But for right now, it's like, you've got first director and you've got the second director, and we're both kind of capturing the shots that need to happen to make the film work together. And so it's been really easy. He writes his stuff and gets it in on deadline. I write my stuff and get it in on deadline. We share notes. We make sure that we don't contradict each other. And then it just goes from there.
And there's a subtle point in that I think is unique to Jason and I that maybe some other writing teams don't have, or maybe the really successful ones do have, but both of us have acting backgrounds. Mm-hmm. And there is a form of acting called improv. And in improv, there are rules to improv to create stories. And if you ever see like a really great troupe, like the Groundlings in LA, which is where people like Lisa Kudrow and Will Ferrell and a lot of Saturday Night Live people come out of, they'll do like an improv for upwards of an hour and a half, just one improv. Mm-hmm. And the trick to doing a really great improv is a small technique called yes and. And so whatever idea one person comes up with, to grow that idea, the other person comes in and they take that idea and they say yes, and then this happens. And I think if you don't work with people, and I've been in situations like this, who don't understand that concept, what you get are people that have this little bag of tricks. And they really want to write this story, and you're like, okay, we'll write a story together. But they already have in their heart, like, but I've got this idea. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to shut that down, or I'm going to bend it all, because I'll just be honest, they're afraid of their creativity. And I've actually worked with some actually pretty big authors in the scene, and I was surprised to see them so insecure and holding on to ideas that they thought were gold, instead of just sort of letting that go and seeing what happens. And so the cool thing about Jason and I is we're both big fans of the yes and movement. So whatever Jason comes up with, like say he makes up a detail about the Legionnaires, which is where he's doing really the most brilliant work. Think stormtroopers, but actually good at what they do. Crack shots, more like Rangers. Yeah. They don't miss. They're elite. They're deadly. The armor works for a reason, all this kind of stuff. And then he adds some detail about their weapon systems or whatever. I don't come in and say, no, Jason, in my world, it does. No, I say yes. And then I try to add a detail that supports and reinforces what he's done. So there's none of our creativity is wasted on striking down the other's ideas. It's actually what we try to do is build each other up as we go. And he's done that for me, and I've done that for him. And if anybody's considering writing, I would really say learn that. You can read it in books, or you could go take an acting class at community theater. And here's the one thing I would tell everybody in the entire world: go take an acting class, go take an improv class at your community workshop or college or whatever. That will actually make you better in business. It'll make you better in life. It'll give you the ability to present. And here's the best part. You have the most fun hanging out with actors.
Yeah, they are good.
Chris Freed had a couple questions about the project. The first one is, when do you anticipate publishing your novel of Galaxy's Edge?
I would say that we'll probably wrap it by June in serial format. And then I would say a month of editing, and I would say a month of production, and I would say August.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that sounds fair. And we actually, for our subscribers, we just started releasing a second novel, which is called Legionnaire, and it takes place prior to the main story arc. And it's more of a military sci-fi about these sort of rangers who are stranded on an alien world and having to fight their way through, just to kind of add to the flavor of the universe as it's in. So yeah, there's a lot to there. That might come out prior to that, but really it's kind of like with Star Wars itself. Episodes 4, 5, and 6. That's the main story arc, and this Legionnaire book is sort of a little Rogue One.
Okay. And since you mentioned subscribers, y'all are doing something that authors are starting to do. Y'all have a subscription service to get the, I guess you could say, get the story as you write it. Why did y'all decide to go that route, and how's the turnout been for that?
So we saw that a lot of people were starting. They weren't doing it at this point. Most people, other authors that we knew, hadn't started a Patreon yet. But we saw that people were doing it here and there, but we thought, we've been in situations where we've been beholden to someone else and stuck to someone else's terms, and with this project, right from the get-go, people were asking about involvement. They were asking about how can I be the publisher, things like that, and we just really wanted it just to be ours. And so we said, let's just do this in-house. Let's make it just entirely ours and go from there. And honestly, we haven't talked about it much. We haven't paid for advertising. We haven't done much at all, I would say. And yet we're at a point where I think by the time the novel does come out, our subscribers will have helped us to pay the sizable cost of putting out a book.
Chris also wants to know, what does the next year look like when with your publication schedules?
So Nick, you should answer that, because you are just the busiest man I know right now.
I'm the busiest guy now. Well, I picked up a secret job that I was finally able to talk about this week. I got hired to world build a AAA video game title for a big company in California. And I can't talk about any of the details of that, but it's really, really exciting. And for me, it's a dream job, because it's literally just world building and like making stuff up and telling what's there and then telling the story. And then now it's very cool because they're actually beginning to build the character models and the world, and I'm getting to see the things that I wrote actually come to life on a computer screen or an animation or just artwork, and that's pretty cool. That's a different effort for me. It's very collaborative. I'm used to working fairly alone. Having said that, I'm just in the process of writing Soda Pop Soldier's sequel, which I'm not sure of the title yet. I've got about 5 titles, and I'm hoping that'll be out sometime in June. And then, and that's going to be published with Castelia House. And then, around Thanksgiving next year, I have a novel coming out from O1 Publishing, and that's going to be a return to the sort of post-apocalyptic stuff that I started with. And then in June, all my actual writing commitments should be finished, except for the video game work, which if it goes forward, I'll have for about 4 years. And I'm going to sit down and commit in June to finishing my series, the Weird series, which is the Red King, the Dark Knight, the Pawn in the Portal, the Lost Castle. Those 4 are out now. I have more books to write, and I want to just go ahead and finish those one after the other. And then when I get about 3 books finished, I'm going to go ahead and start releasing them month to month, and then hopefully tie that series up in 2018. And be free. But if anybody's interested in that, the first book in that series, called The Red King, is free on Amazon. And it's I like to tell people it's kind of like Lost meets The Walking Dead.
So I'm going to write, obviously, the Legionnaire novel. The Galactic Outlaws novel should be out. There's going to be a 4th Till Death novel called No Returns, where I'll make sure to include that 1950s Hep bicycle gang stylings in there, so that should be pretty fun.
That'll be awesome.
The little Black Rebel Motorcycle Club type thing. Sure. And then for the 4th book, when I write a minimum of 4 books, I'm kind of going back and forth between another space military sci-fi or doing lit RPG with a character called Barabosa, who appears on our Sci-Fi Writers Playing Old School D&D podcast.
Okay. So how long do y'all see Galaxy's Edge actually going? Like how many years do you think this will just continue?
I think a long time. Okay. I think as long as there's interest in it, and I can tell you, like right now, the people who are actually getting it month to month, are passionate about it. And we've got one guy that just loves it and writes us, all these letters. And then we've got another guy who just told us this incredibly moving story about what it was like to grow up under communist rule in the 80s and seeing Star Wars and how much he appreciates what we're treating that he considers sacred. I mean, like, to him, Star Wars was this really beautiful thing that the movies actually ruined his love for it. Like, the later movies didn't sort of kind of live up to what he felt Star Wars was. And then he told us, you guys are absolutely doing it right. So we've got like a bunch of fans like that and people on board, and we want to grow that. Mm-hmm. And then the crazy thing is, everybody has wanted to do this. A lot of writers have wanted to do this, but they've been afraid to do it. And so they've been going out and creating their own sort of space opera, military science fiction things out of whole cloth. And having to, I think because of copyright laws and people don't really understand copyright laws or intellectual property, they're afraid to get close to it. And I think what we did is we said, hey, this isn't Star Wars, but the flavor is Star Wars. And you can't patent the concept of blasters or bounty hunters, but we can tell people straight up, like, this feels like Star Wars. So what happened with that is we actually had some fairly successful writers come to us and ask if they can kind of join in. So we're taking our time. We don't want to suddenly go, boom, everybody's writing it and it's crud. What we wanted to do is get out some really good stories that lay the groundwork. And then we want them to come in like they're talking about, and then we want to yes and them and have them yes and us. So in reality, what we're kind of hoping to do is build the living, breathing universe that we can be the gatekeepers of, but hand off to people that we think are as passionate about it as we are.
That's awesome.
And that's really the key. And I think that's also a difference in our subscriber base. Like we tell our subscribers straight up, like, hey, if you're going to support us, we've got, a special Facebook group. But like, if your passion for this type of story matches ours, absolutely, we want to be talking together. And one of our subscribers said, when I saw that on the website about how, you really appreciate us and you want to take a personal approach to your subscribers, I was kind of like, haha, yeah, whatever. But you guys are the real deal. And it's true. Like, we talk to our subscribers all the time. I'd say that they are some of our closest readers because we know that we're all very passionate about this project. Even though Nick and I are the ones that are writing it, they are just as invested. And so their opinion, their ideas, it matters to us. And we listen, and we all just have a good time talking about it.
Yeah, and all the subscribers, for the time being, for me, they're going to be getting all the arcs to all my other books. It's still small, and I can still do that with them. And hey, even if it got big, I would probably do it. But these are people that have people that aren't just. I don't like the term fans. I see a lot of writers saying that, and I don't like that. But these people are the very definition of passionate readers. These are people that, like what Patron is trying to say is that it's a patron of artists. And that's true. But we're not doing it the Patron way. We just said, here's what we're doing. And like, for just as, few as $5, like, people have come in and said, I'm passionate about it. These are regular people. No one's a rock star. These are people who work jobs, have families, and everything like that. But this was something that they like, the things that we've talked about in this interview about, we're just kids playing with action figures in the dirt, telling our own stories. They were like, yeah, I was too. And I'm not a writer, and I want to read this alternate Star Wars. And so that's been the incredibly moving thing. And since they've done that, they can have all my books as I write them for as long as I can do that. But just when you go in at that level, I'm going to give you a bunch more.
So for those that might not be subscribers, hopefully yet, how many times is it once a month, or how often do y'all put out new chapters for your subscribers?
Our subscribers get a minimum of 3 chapters per month now.
Okay.
1 of Legionnaire and 2 of the main story arc. And then we also do, we give them like quarterly gifts. I mean, we do everything we can to make them appreciate how much we appreciate them. But as far as the actual content itself, we lay it all out on the website, which is easy one to remember, StarWars.StarWars.com or GalacticOutlaws.com. But we lay it out, the different subscriber levels. But at the bottom baseline $1 a month level, you're going to get 3 chapters from this world. Plus, we send out a blog kind of giving you sort of the creative insight of what we're going on. We add you to we at least give you the option of joining our subscribers only Facebook group. And just full on access to
You'll probably get the arcs on our books as the ones that we talked about that are coming out this year. So
they've gotten our catalogs pretty well.
And regarding that Star Wars, not StarWars.com, sorry, Disney.
That's funny. So here, like I said, at the Legendarium, we like to end with a section that we call the Legendary Ending. So we'll jump into this, just kind of some random questions here. The first one is, what songs are currently on your writing playlist? And we'll start with Nick. Let's start with you this time.
I'm kind of weird. I do listen to music when I write, but I listen to music more when I create, and a lot of the times that happens when I'm driving. Mm-hmm. So when I write, I actually listen to a lot of classical guitar music or jazz, or I'll sometimes listen to like early English the meditational music, which is sort of that do 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 do. I just kind of like things that just when I wrote the Soda Pop Soldier or Control Alt Revolt, Soda Pop Soldier soundtrack, I actually listened to the soundtrack to Diablo the video game. That was kind of fun. I would say what is firing me right now for Soda Pop Soldier, the songs that the good songs, I would say Wave of Mutilation by the Pixies. And there was one other song. Always Shoot to Thrill comes out because it's such a video game. And I try to make the Call of Duty. I try to make the Soda Pop Soldiers novels very Call of Duty, very rock and roll, full tilt action. So I'll usually jump into some AC/DC just to kind of get those scenes. Oh, of course. For this novel in particular, the one song is Battle Without Honor or Humanity. And that's by Tomoyatsu Hotei. Most people know that song from Kill Bill when she's riding the motorcycle.
Okay. How about you, Jason? What's on yours?
I don't listen to music while I write at all.
Really?
No, I get so caught up in my own head that like people can talk to me and I'm not even aware that they are. And so my wife will kind of do that all the time. She'll be like, I had to say your name 4 times. So I don't listen to music. It's all in my head. But like Nick was saying, in the creative process, when I'm thinking about it, because I think there's a lot of thinking time that should go, or at least for me, before I even sit down to the keyboard. I know what I'm going to write when I sit down already. So I confess that, for Galactic Outlaws, I definitely queued up some John Williams and played my favorite parts of the Star Wars soundtrack. But then for Legionnaire, when I'm getting to the point where I know there's going to be a battle scene and I'm trying to think it up, I'll queue up some Deftones or Rage Against the Machine.
Okay.
Because it has a very, I'd say, 2000 to 2003 Afghanistan feel to it in this particular novel. And so kind of music from close to that time period just to capture that feel.
I would say I just read the first chapter of Jason's Legionnaire book, and military sci-fi, actually someone had to point out to me, is an underserved market. And the person that pointed it out to me is making about $30,000 a month writing mil sci-fi.
Oh, wow.
And the first chapter that I read of Jason's Legionnaire series was like Aliens meets Generation Kill.
Yeah. It's funny you said that, Nick, because Generation Kill, I watched that twice, and I was like, I'm going to write a science fiction version of this.
Yeah, and I think you really did. And I think there are a lot of people who will really appreciate it. And Jason knows of what he speaks. His dad was a pretty decorated, high-ranking military guy. So Jason's got a good touchdown there.
Very nice. Now, Jason, I have to ask, which Deftones album do you listen to?
I tend to listen to White Pony most of the time.
I love that album. That's their best album by far.
Yeah.
I had to ask. So if you,
I would never figure you, Preston, as a Deftones guy.
I know, it's funny. Preston, same thing. I've seen you make comments about some songs, and I'm like, really, Preston? Not in a negative way, but I would have never guessed it.
I was a huge Deftones fan until I saw them go on tour with Metallica.
Okay.
And it ruined it for you?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that kind of did it for me is they did an interview. This is when Metallica did their Summer Sanitarium.
Right.
And the one that I saw them on, it was Mudvayne, Deftones, Linkin Park, Limp Bizkit, and Metallica all together.
Oh, okay.
And whatever the lead singer's name is, I can't remember.
Chino, right?
Yeah, Chino. He said in an interview that the way the band runs is by a democratic format, and they vote on what tours they want to go on. And he was outvoted to go on Summer Sanitarium, and that he felt like they were better than Metallica was, that they were a better band and their music was better than Metallica's.
That is a mighty bold statement.
Yeah. And then they went on stage and they played a lot of the White Pony album, but I had the hardest time figuring out which songs were which because they sucked live. I mean, absolutely sucked live. I think I actually sat down during their performance because it was just that bad.
There is nothing worse than a summer concert with a band that has, especially if the lead singer has blown out his vocals and they can't get through the set. But having said that, I have seen some shows, and I would say this. I saw Prince one time. I didn't even want to go. I was just dating a girl who wanted to go. And I went and I was like, Prince, whatever. And that cat kicked butt. That cat could play live. That cat could play live like nobody's business. And run around and run up 3-story speakers playing his guitar. And I was not, like I said, I was more of a cult Billy Idol kind of fan, Social Distortion. And I was very impressed. That was tragic.
Two of the better shows I've been to, like better bands I've seen live, Switchfoot puts on an amazing show if you ever get to see them live. And then Need for Breathe. I saw them right when their song Washed by the Water came out.
Okay.
I saw them live when they only had 2 albums out, and they put on an amazing show as well if you ever get to see them live. I mean, they almost sound like what you hear on an album.
Yeah, and that's tough.
Yeah. So Jason, we'll start with you this time. If you had a time machine, where would you travel and why?
Forward and backwards. I can go either way.
Either way.
So I think. So I'll be a downer here. I don't think I'd go too far back. I think I'd grab my wife, and I think we'd just go back a few years before her mom died, and just have the opportunity to kind of say the things that we want to say, do the things that we want to do, and just get a second chance. And that can be my maybe sappy but true. Take advantage of the time you have with your loved ones now, because it doesn't always play out the way you think it will.
Okay. And then Nick, same question to you.
I think I'm going forward. I want to see what tomorrow holds.
Okay.
Yeah. So I can't say what it would be, but the reason I write post-apocalyptic novels is I find it very peaceful and meditational. So if I got forward and everything was blown to smithereens, that would be a kind of, I know this is dark and weird, that would be a kind of paradise for me.
And so, and then we'll go to you this time, Nick. If you could have one superpower, which one would it be and why?
Oh man, it was, I used to do this in bars a lot. I would always say, the personality quiz question is, you can either pick invisibility or flying. Mm-hmm. And you would ask people and it would tell you everything. And basically the people who pick invisibility are criminals, and the people who pick flying are very noble and kind. So I like invisibility.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm a horribly dark person.
Well, you were wanted for murder, so that kind of goes.
Yeah, that's why I need Jesus so bad, because I'm such a mess. I'm just being honest, But no, I mean, I think flying would be cool and everything, because I actually don't like to fly. Mm-hmm. But I think invisibility is cool. But every use for invisibility is criminal. Mm-hmm. So I mean, maybe I could spy for the government. That would be fun.
Okay.
I mean, you could hide really well.
I could hide really well.
Be the best hide and seek champion ever.
Right.
Exactly. I could be Osama bin Laden.
Yeah, it could be a SEAL team. Just get out there.
Yeah.
You know what? I would want to be the tick. I'd take 9 vulnerability.
Okay.
Because healing factors are kind of cool, but you still get hurt. The tick doesn't even feel it, and so that's what I'd want to do.
Yeah, my hypochondria wants 9 vulnerability.
Amazon's supposed to be doing that the Tick season now. I saw it announced like a couple months ago that they were actually going to continue on with the pilot and do a whole season now.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was impressed with that. It harkened to the TV show, the cartoon, and the comic book really well. Unlike Patrick Warburton, which wasn't terrible, but it wasn't the same thing.
Yeah.
Boom.
Well, Jason, we're going to come to you now with the question we're famous for. We're going to let you answer it first. A penguin walks through the door right now wearing a sombrero. What does he say, and why is he here?
He says, "Hello, my name is Pinego Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die."
There we go. And Nick, same question to you.
All your base belong to us.
There we go.
You would say that.
Before we head out, Nick, we'll come to you for this one. Do you have any advice, whether it be for writing or for life, that you'd like to share with the listeners?
I would just say, whatever you're going to do it absolutely passionately. That would be the thing that I just see in the difference between those that are doing it, successfully in writing, and those that are trying to obtain some kind of happiness, thinking that, if I could just be that famous indie author who got a hit and get all his money, and then I would be happy. But you would find out that cat's not very happy. And I would just say, like, the greatest joy that you can have, I think the joy that both Jason and I have, is when you write a book and it does really well, and one reader reaches out to you and they're like, "This was really great." And I think you've given me that comment on some of my books. When someone loves your book so much and they're like, "You made my Friday. I slowed down and I drove home slower listening to your book," or whatever, that means everything to me. I wrote one book. It was the Wasteland Saga, which is all 3 books of the Old Man in the Wasteland. And the main character, dies at the end of that. And he goes to heaven. And one reader wrote me and she said, "My brother just died and I want you to tell me more about going to heaven." And so there's just no price. There's no amount of money you can get for helping somebody who's suffering, or just like, because we all have to do stuff we hate or take long drives. And if you sit in an airplane for 4 hours. And so as a writer, if you could just, make somebody happy and take their mind off bills and cancer and family, then that's everything to me. But the only way to do that as a writer is to do it absolutely passionately, not because you want to get a contract or you want to be number one, because there's just no guarantee for that. I guarantee you that if you write a book, someone on Amazon will buy it and read it, at least one person. Mm-hmm. I can't guarantee that you will get a rich and famous contract, and I definitely can't guarantee that you will be happy. But if you dig the fact that a total stranger might read your book and it might make their day a little better, then that's awesome. I can guarantee that.
Okay. And Jason, how about you?
Yeah, I think, writing, Nick touched on it really well. As far as living, I think there's nothing I can say that can top what's been said truthfully in the past. To do to others as you would have them do to you. It sums up the law and the prophets. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. That attitude and that kind of outward love for others will give you a life well spent, regardless of whether everybody reads your book or nobody reads your book. It puts your identity in something beyond your accomplishments. And really, if you're not going to do it to your family, to your friends, to your neighbors, who is?
Yeah. Well said.
Sounds good. Well, so where can listeners go if they want to learn more about y'all and your stories?
My ex-wife has an earful to say. No. That was a joke. You can find me at Nick Cole Books, NickCola books.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me on Twitter. I might be having a show on Gab Periscope soon. I'm not sure. So you can find me at all of those places. And I say all kind. If you've kind of figured out where I'm at politically, I generally keep Twitter very political. On Facebook, I just try to keep it pretty much, good stuff, social media vibe, the love, all my book release stuff there and everything like that. I write about 6 blogs a week. So if you go to nickcolebooks.com, you can read all those blogs, and I write on an eclectic variety of subjects.
Okay. Jason, how about you?
Yeah, you can find me at jasonanspach.com, and it's similar. Although I think I tend to be less political on Twitter and more jokey, I guess. I got jokes, but those are, I'm also on Facebook. I think everybody is just about, but really, if you want to, I think if you want to get a flavor, if we're new to you, if you go to galacticoutlaws.com or starwarsnotstarwars.com, that's a great place to find out a little bit about us. You don't have to subscribe to start reading. We've got free samples that get you into the story just by going there. So that would be where I'd send you, unless you really like me and really dislike Nick, or vice versa. And then you can go to our individual websites.
Yes. So, and there's one other thing too.
Yeah.
Jason and I do a podcast with a bunch of fine other writers that are very funny and witty. And we have a good time, and we should have you on there one time and teach you how to play D&D.
Yeah.
But on that podcast, that's called Sci-Fi Writers Playing Old School Dungeons and Dragons. We've actually been doing that podcast for 2 years, and it's rather well received. I don't want to say that it's going to get an Emmy, but it's probably going to get an Emmy. And we just play that old geeky game Dungeons and Dragons, and we act about 12 years old, and we even have a girl on there, and she acts about 12 years old, and we know we have 2 girls now, and they act about 12 years old, and we try not to get killed. And Jason is the dungeon master this season. We have different seasons, and if anybody knows Ravenloft, we're playing in the world of Ravenloft right now. So Ravenloft was a very scary world in Dungeons and Dragons. It was the Haunted House series. So basically everything's very creepy and macabre, like that old Dark Shadows television series. And it's a lot of fun. And we almost got killed today because we actually recorded 4 podcasts today. And my character saved the day, as usual.
I seem to remember your character being the first one to run out a window and leave everybody else. But
he saved himself, at least.
He did. And that's old school D&D, the letter D, the letter N. Was that Delta, November, Delta? OldSchoolDND.com.
Yeah.
Well, we will throw links to all those in the show notes over at legendarium.com.
Awesome.
Well, thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank y'all for coming on and doing 30-minute author interviews. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Preston.
Thank you. You're a scholar, a saint, a friend, a gentleman, and the best thing I can say about you is you're a reader.
There we go. I try. Well, guys, that's all the time we've got for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to 30-Minute Author Interviews. We hope you come back next Wednesday and every Wednesday for a brand new episode. And head on over to legendarium.com. That's leghgenDarium.com. And check out the show notes for this episode. Nick Cole and Jason Anspach are giving away 2 3-month subscriptions to their story, Galaxy's Edge. And we'd like to give a shout out to a couple of our Patreon subscribers. We'd like to say thank you to Diane S. Loftus, Third Scribe, and Maggie Stewart Grant. They have supported 30-Minute Author Interviews over at Patreon. Head on over to patreon.com/legendarium. That's patreon.com/LEIGHGENDARIUM. and check out the different rewards we have. We have t-shirts as rewards. We have a special Patreon-only podcast called 10 Questions With, where we're going to be asking authors 10 questions, and many other rewards. So thank you to those 3 for supporting us on Patreon. And until next time, guys, remember to stay legendary. Oh, screwed that one up. Blooper reel.